Well, I know many are keeping tabs, keeping an ear, waiting for that ministerial list. But we have to tackle this matter first of all. Let's go to Abuja.
Well, yes, indeed. The elections have been long concluded. We know that the matter disputes are in court, but these recommendations and the final report from the EU Observer team is coming now, and I'm sure that quite a number of Nigerians will have one or two things to say on it. We have with us in the studio this morning Dr. Emmanuel Agbo, who's the Deputy National Publicity Secretary.
No, Deputy National Secretary.
Beg your pardon?
Deputy National Secretary.
Deputy National Secretary, okay, yes. Publicity is out of it, my apologies there. He's the Deputy National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. And we also have with us Honorable Patrick Ikarale, who is a member of the All Progressives Congress. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I was going to ask you if you have seen the entire report, or you've just seen the summary at least.
We've seen the summary.
What was your first impression of the report?
Well, the first impression of the report is that by and large, it validated the position of the People's Democratic Party on the general anomalies, particularly all the irregularities, deliberate and conscious, as committed against the Nigerian people during the last presidential elections. I want to agree totally and completely too with the EU reports, where it took some hard knocks on the leading political parties, including my own party, in terms of shortcomings in our not taking absolute and total control of followership. But you know, when you have this large followership in millions, sometimes there are off marks. And, but that's not to say we couldn't do better. Accepting that is to let the Nigerian people know that, yes, PDP is prepared to, in detail, go through the reports as we have it. And wherever political parties, particularly as a major opposition party in this country, where we are supposed to do anything as required both by law and in the conduct of party management to strengthen democracy, to bring about peaceful elections, that we will stop at nothing to bring that to bear, especially with our membership across the country.
What parts of the report do you think validates your stance? As I think I was part of the statement released by the PDP, that it validated your stance. What parts of the report validates your stance?
Over militarization of the entire process, outright intimidation of opposition, and here I want to get some,
outright intimidation. I think a part of the report did say that there was, I mean, all parties were allowed to contest.
No,
that is amongst all the parties.
Good, that is what I want to clearly try to explain before you came in. When we talk about intimidation, it has nothing to do with participation. Electoral processes are clearly defined in, let me segment it for you. You have parties, a time frame where parties are asked to approach INEC with the list of their candidates. Once we are done with that, we now have another segment where INEC allows for people to go back to the electorates to seek. In all of this, nobody questions.
That's the campaigns, right?
That's the campaigns.
Okay.
So what EU referred to here largely is that they allowed as many parties as had candidates to approach INEC for them to actually engage in the process. And that even during the campaign processes, they saw, by and large, a field that was allowed for people to go to the electorate. What the leadership, by extension, the APC and their government did, was to reserve violence for the last of the three, and which is election day scenario, where we complained of intimidation, outright violence, disenfranchisement of Nigerians from actually participating.
Was that recorded in all centers? Because there were states you won, didn't you?
We did, of course, but we won, and I am from Benue. We won Benue. The story is better told than being experienced. And there are thousands and one Benue indigents out there that will confirm to you as I speak now on television. We won rivers. You had better not cross rivers during the day of election. We won Akwa Ibom. We were all living witnesses to the hell that Akwa Ibom indigents were subjected to, all in the name of trying to take a few states by all means. This is what we referred to. Election day violence that precluded or debarred people from expressing their will freely. Go to the polls, vote for or against PDP if you wish. This was our stand.
Let Mr. Ekareli come in here. Honorable, you have heard what Dr. Agbo has to say.
Yes.
I'm sure that you have also seen the EU report as well. Do you think that the recommendations, some of them given, and some parts of the report indict the processes which led to the victory of your candidate?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians. It's interesting to, be here this morning. I would rather summarize by saying that it is on record that even from the EU's point of view, they did mention that every election is usually work in progress globally. There's always room for improvement. And from what we have seen from that same report, which is the subject matter of this discussion, it was observed that there were a lot of remarkable improvements in this election compared to the previous elections in Nigeria. And that, I believe, is a
remarkable improvement.
Oh, yes. It's part. No, I'm talking from the reports.
Oh, you're talking from the reports.
From the reports.
Okay.
So, because that is the subject matter. It's often said there's always two sides to a coin. And until there is a coin that has no two sides, you can never go into election, come out of it without issues as we're having right now. The bottom line is the degrees of these issues. Are we degenerating or, improving? But from the EU's report, which is the subject matter, I'm saying, and I'm quoting them to say, from their own report, against all that have been said, that in all, that the 2019 election showed remarkable improvement over and above the previous elections in this country. Two, my colleague and friend here just gave you 3 classical examples from 3 states. He said Rivers, Benue, and Akwa Ibom. And these are stated by his own estimation.
Do you need more than those examples?
No, wait a minute. No. He just, we are here. He mentioned the 3 states.
Yes.
Classical, frontal.
For military, I mean,
wait a minute. The point I'm making is this.
Yes.
Can I just finish my point?
By all means, go ahead.
That he was laying that to show how much of, lack of electoral freedom, quote unquote, that existed. But he was quick to say that we won this, we won that, we won that. The 3 states he mentioned. So what is the essence of, people talking about freedom, electoral violence, rigging, and what have you? It's not to win an election. That is the whole idea. But if the 3 classical examples he has given, he's saying that PDP won those states. It simply suggests that the party leading the APC did not have anything to do with rigging or outright manipulation of electoral processes.
Are you
because if that happens, are
you reading it mischievously, or you're not seeing what he said?
I'm quoting from what he said.
No, because I
didn't hear him say so?
I asked him the question,
yes,
as to, I said, but the PDP won in some states when he talked about military intimidation, and then he broke down the process. He
yes,
talked about the competitive process approaching INEC, the campaign process, which he admits were largely free and fair, but he says the violence seemed to have been reserved for election day. And he gave the examples
yes,
of Akwa Ibom, of even his state, Benue, and Rivers. Those were states where we did hear complaints of military intervention, and in some instances we saw military intervention as well. Are you going to be disputing that?
No. Why was there military intervention in the first case? Have you bothered to ask yourself that question? in civilized democracies, do we really have to get military involved? The 3 states you just mentioned, which were won by PDP, obviously it must be based on security reports as to the level, of agitation and preparedness for violence by the major actors in the respective states.
Honorable,
and don't you forget
I think
that,
part of the question
yes,
is, what level of military involvement do we need, and where should we be sending the military? That's the key question.
Do we really need?
Because the question is, how was the military deployed in this election? Was it in a manner to intimidate voters, or was it in a manner that disrupted the process?
And I'm here to say no. If it was meant to intimidate voters, the 3 states he gave, which he said were highly militarized, he on his own, and you know as a fact, were won by PDP. So if the federal government of Nigeria, that is the ruling party, intended to intimidate voters, and they did use the military to intimidate, quote unquote, the likelihood is that APC would have won those states. So it is only natural to believe that the military involvement, that's why I did ask, do we really have to get military in the street? It is usually based on security reports as to the level of preparedness. And if you look at the states in question, they are all states that were either being governed or won by PDP.
Gentlemen, you know, I don't want this to turn into an argument of some sort.
It is already.
Generally, that's how political parties tend to view this kind of reports. The idea is to strengthen our political process.
Does it?
And where it is that, you know, people, where we have not done well as a country in terms of, you know, strengthening our political process, we should be able to do something about it so that we do not have unnecessary arguments after elections. The idea is for the process to be free and fair. In general, would you say that you saw anything good about the conduct of these elections? I mean, where the EU praised the elections and where, you know, even your party can learn a lesson or two. I'm looking at, let me quickly refer to the report now, where they even say that legislation should be made, for instance, that women should be included into the electoral process. Is this something that you will agree with?
Absolutely. As a party, going down the first 16 years of leadership of this great country, consciously PDP chose and decided that for us to have some degree of gender parity, some degree of feminine involvement in the process, we must consciously make concessions, part of which includes for any elective office of the land constitutionally allowed, and you are a woman wanting to run under the People's Democratic Party, the forms of the party are free outrightly for you. Now, going by whatever is the recommendations of this report, if that is insufficient in trying to throw up more elected members or governors or elected officers, say, on the ticket of the party, I just told you here that as a party, going through the detailed reporting and suggestions that are made to advance our democracy in a way and manner that it will be all-encompassing, all-embracing, but most importantly, free and fair, without any form of violence, not on the actors, not on the citizenry, that we will not only go into the details of these recommendations, but on our part, we will do all that is needful to ensure that within the party, these are brought to bear in advancing and deepening the democracy that today run.
I'm looking at, let me quickly you know, read out some of the recommendations for our viewers. I'm looking at the legal framework, which it starts with. It says a comprehensive legal regulation be established for the cancellation of voting in polling units with clear grounds specified, time frames elaborated, and requirements made for transparency. That's one of the, I think, was the very first one.
I was to raise this issue.
Yes.
Moving down the line for obvious reasons. At what stage of result collection can we cancel results? Because if from this, at the stage of voting, the presiding officers or the electoral personnel validate the vote and register such a vote and move it to the next collection center, By law, all that a collector does is to assemble. Does a collection officer has the right to still void a vote that he was not privy to how the vote was cast?
These are questions that I think have now been asked in the court of law.
Good. I agree that they are before the court of law, but for the purposes of the fact that emphasis on this have been made by the EU report, and not just the EU report, previous reports of all observer groups, that elections in terms of voiding votes should be reserved at the polling units where, for either reasons of the presiding officer clearly stating that, okay, look, you either use somebody's voting instrument, or they saw somebody guided you in the voting process, or any infringement on the law establishing free and fair voting. At that point, the presiding officer or the officers managing elections at the polling unit cannot say no. So votes are voided, so votes are correct. But
whatever the process we decide to use,
yes,
because I don't think that the EU is concerned as to where these votes are voided. The question is, we need to set out a framework where we all agree that they can be voided at this point.
Let me now ask this question, going by what you have said.
Yes.
Now for a presidential election, presidential election that took place at the polling unit, and we have 3 stages of collection. From the polling unit, votes are counted, no collection. They are counted and registered. Collection begins at the ward. It's collected at the ward, and it passes through another collection center at the local government areas. And these votes were not cancelled at the polling units. They were accepted at the collection centers in the ward, accepted at the collection centers at the local government, possibly accepted at the 3rd and final collection center at the state, because after the state, what you do is just the adding of figures at the final collection center in Abuja for announcement. And you begin to alter figures, you begin to alter, and these are noticeable alterations to the huge tone of over 1.6 million as expressed by the report. How can that volume of inconsistency in figures be acceptable at the final, what right do the final collection officer, because all we are saying is, for the integrity of the process, we brought distinguished Nigerians, professors from the tertiary institutions, believing that, yes, they are going to bring to bear, one, their name, the constituency they are coming from, and all of that to ensure that everybody accepts the result. And then they collect results and come from the various 36 centers.
Doctor, I'm afraid I have to interrupt you because Mr. Karele also has to have about as much time as you have to speak. So let me go to him now. It is one area where it has caused a lot of controversy. It came up during the collation at INEC, at the National Collation Center here in Abuja. I think the INEC, beg your pardon, the PDP agent, the main agent, I remember him now, Osita Chidoka, raised that issue at the end of collation. Also your own agent as well, Mr. Festus Keyamo SAN, also weighed in on that particular matter. And it has come up as the #1 recommendation here: comprehensive legal regulation should be established for the cancellation of voting in polling units. What do you have to say to that?
Well, the truth of the matter remains, like I said earlier on, there is usually 2 sides to any coin that is given. And until you have if you can have a coin that has one side, no other side, then that is when we'll have electoral process that will not have issues. Now, if you come to the issue of allowing presiding officers to cancel this at the polling units, like is being advocated, you have to equally bear in mind that there is no clear-cut position on issues of this nature, because you are likely going to have a situation where people will now say the ruling party influenced a particular set of people to be presiding officers in polling units so that they can end up doing their bidding by cancelling votings that were meant to be for their own candidate. That is the opposition now. The truth of the matter remains that the process, like even the EU, did mention that as much as possible, as part of the improvement of the 2019 election, that the results that they saw were in tandem, more agreed, more or less, with what the generality from the polling unit to the national. There was no discrepancies as such.
There were. Let's not deceive the public.
The same position that was given shows clearly that the EU position that we are discussing did not dispute the fact that the presidency, I mean, that Buhari won the elections. It was clear that they did say that 96% of the total vote cast actually went to the two major contending parties, which is the APC and PDP. And they went further to do the arithmetic in terms of the votes that both parties had. So to that extent, I do not see any major disagreement
I don't think the results here
Yes.
are what is in contention. The
No.
EU did not wade into results. In fact,
Yes.
they refuse to even talk about server, but they are focused on the process. Is this one recommendation which you will agree with them should be looked into?
I'm saying that there's no recommendation that will be perfect or imperfect. It depends on how the actors operate.
But what is your take on this recommendation?
If you ask me,
yes.
if it's a way forward, we believe that it's a democratic process. Like I said,
you don't think that it should be spelled out clearly?
No. It should be. Every election like it has been summarized by the EU is work in progress. You keep improving. If that is a possible way to eliminate these issues of electoral malpractices, why not? We go for it. But what I'm saying is, even if you do not expect that it's going to be 100%, what every Nigerian at the end of the day. That's why I said, until you have a coin that has only one side, which is not possible, there's no election you will go into without having a winner and a loser. And we must learn to understand that we have to develop our democracy in such a way that people, when you lose election, you should learn to take it, like they often say, sportsmanly. And that can only happen if the process itself from the beginning is as free as possible. In this case, the area where I think we probably would have been having issues is if they have come up to say, part of the observations and recommendation, that outrightly the entire process that led to the election and the election of the president as it is today and others were such that people were intimidated from the beginning. There was no room for campaign. People were not allowed to do the voting the way they should have been carried out.
I mean,
and the coalition itself.
If you agree that the elections are not perfect and every election is work in progress, the question is, what are you accepting from the recommendations?
No. I am not here to disagree.
Yes.
I'm not here, get me right, I'm not disagreeing with what they recommend. I'm only saying.
You seem to be disagreeing.
No. Listen,
that's what it seems.
My disagreement must be, if I am disagreeing, I will tell you that I disagree with what is being said. I'm only saying that why agreeing? It's a recommendation. It's not hook, line, and sinker that you are. It's a recommendation. And if it's coming from a body like EU, which some of our local observers have equally made, we have quite a number of local observers. And like I said, there is no way you can say that we do it this way. So long you have opposing parties, except if you have a sole candidate that everybody is saying this is our candidate. So long you have two or more candidates, you are likely going to have this sort of disagreements.
I have to interrupt you. We have to take a break now. We'll come back and we'll continue this discussion on the recommendations of the EU Observer Mission in Nigeria. In a moment, please stay with us. We have with us in the studio Dr. Emmanuel Agbo, who's the Deputy National Secretary of the PDP, and Honorable Patrick Ikarele, who is a member of the All Progressives Congress, the APC. Well, we have questions from our colleagues in Lagos. It's over to you, gentlemen.
Yes, both of you are stakeholders in the democratic process to ensure that elections, or should I say democracy, is deepened in this country. I'm just wondering, since you're stakeholders, did at any point INEC have meetings with you that explicitly explains whether or not a server will be used to collate data from these elections? Let me start from the gentleman from the APC.
Well, Gimba, I'm afraid you'll have to come again with your question. There was some interruption while you were asking that question.
Okay, let me take this again. I know that both of you are stakeholders in this democratic process and have had meetings with the election empire, INEC, to try to carry everyone along and have a basic understanding of what is required in the process. Did INEC at any point make it explicitly clear to you as stakeholders that it will adopt the use of a server to collate data for the purpose of the 2019 general elections?
The server. Did INEC, say that they're going to use a server at any point in time, and he wants the future weight in on that?
Well, if I got him right, I think I was privileged to watch the INEC chairman on a program with one of your presenters, Shokin. In that interview, shortly before the election, he was unequivocally clear. There was no ambiguity of any kind. When he give reasons why there will be nothing like the use of server in the election of 2019. He gave the logistics reasons. 2, that we do not even have 3G or 4G in most parts of the country. 3, issues relating to connectivities and the likes. And because of this, that it was not going to be possible, because if you do say you are using server, it simply means that every part of the country should be engaged in the process, and it should be uniform in terms of the modes you are, the modus of operandi that is to be approached or used. It is surprising to see issues being raised over and over in virtually on daily basis concerning the INEC server. I do not know. Even the EU that we are talking about, the head of the EU mission that brought about this issue we are talking about today, even made it very clear. They do not have anything. They have no knowledge of using using cyber for the purpose of these 2019 elections. So it's like, I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know.
Can you tell us where it is coming from, Dr. Agbo?
Well, thank you. I think there's clear paradox here. Where the report is hard, we don't take. Where the report is favorable is good, but of course that is traditionally, over the last 4 years, what is akin to my friends and brothers of the APC. But we must get this straight. INEC told Nigerians that there will be use of server, electronic transmission of results. And I want us to get this clear. When you are if you went to a polling unit and voted, you'll discover that at the point of trying to authenticate through fingerprint, if there was no network, it won't go. And they will wait until you now have network. And the network available to every card reader was all that was required for the transmission of results from that place. And they had it across the entire country. Unfortunately, today we want to try to let people say or believe that there was no server. INEC trained hundreds of thousands of presiding officers in this country and trained them inclusive of transmission of elections results to server, including the processes and procedures of the transfer of these results to the server, inclusive of, very importantly, the code for such transmission as they vary from unit to unit. For the same INEC to come or APC to come and try to justify that at one point they told Nigerians they were not going to use server. When 2-3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks to the election, most critical period of the election, where they were training personnel, they brought cards, that is the card readers, not only trained them on the use of the card reader for authentication and voting, but equally went ahead and trained them for the transmission of the election result to the server.
Well,
the point I just made, wait a minute.
Sorry.
The point I just made, wait 1 second. The point I made, I didn't concoct, it's not my making. I said from this same studio, the INEC chairman made it clear to the world that we are not using the server.
I'm afraid I have to interrupt you, gentlemen, because we have, this matter is in court. It is before a court of law.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we wait and see how that matter is eventually, how it eventually plays out in the court of law. But I think that they still have more questions for you from Lagos. You mentioned the issue of training, and I think that might come up shortly.
Yes, but before we go to that aspect, Marco, I just want to ask both gentlemen, starting with the PDP, what your take is on one of the recommendations that concerns political financing. One of them says, item 17 specifically says, strengthen transparency and accountability in campaign spending. Now, you would remember that the law already prescribes how much each of these each candidate at the different levels should spend. If we are to look at it, of course, many people have also said that that's not the case, that many of the candidates spent a lot more, the political parties spent a lot more than the law prescribes. So how do you think we should deal with the issue of transparency of campaign spending?
Well, thanks. That is one very serious issue that's really supposed to be of concern to all Nigerians. And that has to do with campaign fundings, campaign spending, and the ceiling, particularly going beyond it. I say so because if we must open the field to all Nigerians, particularly those that will likely get the best out of, but that are financially constrained, then strict adherence to the law will be required. And here, I agree totally that when it comes to financing, INEC should come clean, because you and I know that the public, and I want to say this without trying to hurt feelings, the Nigerian populace is a very impoverished society that little tips can throw them off the balance in terms of running for, changing their minds for who or who not to vote for. And so today, if INEC is strict in compliance and is not selective in who should spend what and who should not spend what, it will help the polity. I said this because if you turn a blind eye to Mr. A, where he is supposed to spend 11 million and he spends maybe 300 million, and you are now strict on Mr. B, who is supposed to spend 11 million and cannot even afford 5 million, and at the end, you come with a result that shows that, okay, Mr. A has won all elections. I mean, in the next election, I want to doubt if Mr. B is going to strictly stand by whatever INEC says. So this has to, first of all, do with the body that is charged with the responsibility of ensuring strict adherence to the ceiling in terms of the funding. You and I will agree, yes, over time, that, an opposition that is struggling on the ground, barely not finding food to feed, where do we have the money for the ceiling that has been set at the various levels of campaigns? And so this will very properly and adequately be addressed by my friend here, particularly since they had the National Treasury and they had it all in all, and through it at the whims and caprices, well, as it is today, we see that there was nothing, they broke the ceilings and even broke the floor, took off the roof. It's not the issue of whether they were within the confines of what was supposed to be expended. But as I said, it may not only be one political party, but we clearly know that of all the political parties, one is most guilty of this.
All right, thank you. Dr. Iharale, what's your take on this? How do you think we should
my take.
No, you are not Iharale. Have you changed your name to Iharale now?
Oh,
that question,
sorry.
I believe, is for me.
Okay.
I've heard you clearly. But I think the accusation here is most spurious. Talking about breaking the ceiling. I do not want to, allow that position to go without telling him that that is very, very far from being correct. And if being in power, means that you have access to all the funds to run the election, I think he should, pause and think back a little to remember that before now, PDP was in power for, 16 years in this country. So if being in power empowers you and entitles you automatically to bring in the ceilings, that's a different story for a different day. But suffice to say here that the issue relating to electoral spending, putting ceiling, is a very difficult position if we must be honest with ourselves. You can only say so if you are talking of salaries that is being paid to, staff or workers of a political party. Aside that, how do you determine what somebody spent in, for instance, preparing drinks or food for people that are going to move from one campaign train to the other for the day? So it's a very difficult thing to do. The ceiling something can only be related to. Maybe you talk of the amount of money you ask for people to purchase from at any level, the amount of money they may need to pay by way of contribution to the party. Anything short of this, if you want to holistically say a given sum of money, you put a ceiling, it's to the best of my understanding, having been in practical politics, having contested election myself at the national level, I know that there is really no way you can, put your foot down to say you want to, limit somebody's expenses for the day. First and foremost, we do not operate on the same.
Were you saying that we should just give it up then? We should.
No. I've said the area you can possibly monitor, the area you can possibly discuss, are those areas that you can have control over. Like, if you can fix a ceiling that for presidential form, or taking the form for, at different levels, should not be in excess of so and so. If you are a worker, you are a staff of a party secretariat, you must not earn more than that. But you cannot now say that some people live in the riverine areas. The cost of transportation for campaign, moving people from the waters across to the other side, is not necessarily the same with where you can use motorbikes or even bicycles. So
are you saying that we should give up trying to cap campaign finances?
I have just given you a caveat.
You've given an instance,
yes.
But I'm asking whether should we give it up, since you're saying it's going to be difficult? Is it something that we should just, raise our hands up in the air and say it's not going to work?
It is still used, if we want to be very objective and honest with ourselves, making laws that will be rendered nugatory at the end of the day, laws that cannot be obeyed.
Just make sure that I'm understanding you. Gentlemen, I want to take your last thoughts on this because we're almost out of time. What are your thoughts? What area would you say INEC should focus on, especially when we're looking at reforms INEC and the government of the day should be looking at? You have the first take, Dr. Agbo.
Well, since this is supposed to be my thoughts, you and I know that all that this country craves for is a free process, devoid of all forms of intimidation. We want to look at an electoral process where Nigerians could even vote from their houses. A process that is as credible as people move into the queue, they stand, and less than 30 minutes, 1 hour, voting is done. But most importantly, not only should the voting be done, but as voting is in progress, it is centrally collected. We can make do with transparent electoral process, resulting in unquestionable results if we remove the collections at the ward, collections at the local government, collections at the state, where results are outrightly being tampered with. And
so in summary,
I am asking for voting process that right as at when you cast your vote, it's being transmitted. The voting machine should be the transmitter, not even the accreditation card.
So electronic voting is what you're looking at?
Complete electronic voting that transmits results immediately. It will safeguard over 1,001 things. You and I, and let's not pretend about this. Results, yes, have declared the elections, we have said, is come and gone. Card readers, while it was being insisted at point A, were not even used at point B.
So that is your own recommendation. Quickly, what will be your own priority recommendation?
Well, I would say that we need an electoral reforms that possibly will capture most of what my friends have spoken about here, which borders on, as much as possible, people voting electronically. But saying this, I'm equally not unmindful of the fact that there are a lot of difficulties in this, but it would be the most ideal thing if we can get our entire populace registered and be able to cast their votes in an electronic manner in such a way that there is no interference in between the voting and the end results be given. And until we're able to achieve this, like it's obtainable in most civilized democracies, I believe we are still going to be having this back and forth set of arguments as to whether what happened was right or wrong.
It's a good place to live, gentlemen. We have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise early this morning. We've been speaking with Dr. Emmanuel Agbo, who's the Deputy National Publicity Secretary Deputy National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, and also Honorable Patrick Ikarele, who is a member of the APC. Thank you for coming again on Sunrise Daily. The program continues in a moment. Please stay with us.
Thank you.